Oh, baby, I've been telling people forever and ever and ever that Beyonce's brand is Ancestor Veneration. Beyonce's brand is Ancestor Veneration. Beyonce's brand is Ancestor Veneration. People always want to ask, what's her brand? Every time she drops a product, what does this have to do with her brand? Well, what's her brand? Her brand is Ancestor Veneration. And for those of you who don't know what that is, Ancestor Veneration is simply the practice, the art of honoring your ancestors. Not worshiping, honoring. Baby, everything Beyonce drops is in alignment with honoring her ancestors. Sir Davis was her paying homage to her great grandfather who made moonshine. House of Darion was an honor, paying homage to her grandmother who made clothes. Renaissance was her paying homage to Uncle Johnny made my dress, okay? Her Uncle Johnny who transitioned, who really helped shape her mother's experience and understanding of fashion and style, right? If you read Mama Tina's memoir, Matriarch, she quickly makes you realize that the ancestor veneration runs in the family. Throughout the beginning of Matriarch, Mama Tina is spending so much time honoring the ancestors, honoring the people in her family who came before her. She even talks about how the ancestors were speaking to her when she named Solange.
Let me tell you how I got Solange's name. I went to Paris when I was 27. I got a baby name book from my friend who was about to give birth. And I brought the book back to her. So when I got pregnant, she inspired me to have a baby. And I got pregnant on my trip. I got back, I said, can I have the book back? I got the book back, and out of all the names in there, I picked Solange. No connection to anything other than that French baby name book.
That's it.
Named her Solange Piaget. And come to find out, my great-grandmother, my great-great-grandmother, and my great-great-great-grandmother, all their middle names were Solange.
These are women that you didn't know.
I knew my mom's all the way back, but I didn't know my dad.
Right.
So I said, you know, people are going to ask me about my dad's people. I better learn what their names were.
Right.
And see if I can find them. So I went back, and her name, can you believe it was the ancestors speaking to me?
Oh, my gosh.
And I called Solange and Beyonce immediately and sent it to them, and they were just in awe of it.
Floored,
and
yeah.
Solange called me back, and she was like, Mama, what kind of voodoo, Louisiana mess is this?
And by now, we all know that Beyonce's name is an ancestral name. Beyonce's first name, Beyonce, is actually the maiden name coming from her mom. And her mom gave Beyonce the name because she wanted the name to carry on. But now we know that Solange's name is also an ancestral name. So the ancestor veneration runs in the family. And baby, I'm about to do a breakdown of this film from a spiritual perspective. Not just the album, but the film that dropped in 2016. Because a lot of people thought that she was only talking about healing from cheating, being cheated on. But no, this film is an honor to the work that it takes to break generational curses and honor and uplift generational blessings. Baby, we gonna get into this one. Now, when Lemonade the film dropped in April of 2016, I think the world just was not ready. Everybody was so caught up in the tea of it all that they weren't necessarily catching the spirituality of it all. So let's get into it. Now, I done told y'all 50-11 times that Beyonce's brand is Ancestor Veneration. Her film Lemonade was inspired by Daughters of the Dust, which is an old school classic movie about a Gullah Geechee family called the Peasant Family from St. Helena Island, which is in Gullah Geechee territory. They were experiencing the Great Migration, and they were trying to preserve their hoodoo root working culture. Now, when Lemonade the film first dropped in 2016, it was before the spiritual awakening of 2020 during the panic. So images like this had people shooketh, and they were either gossiping about how demonic the film was, or they were gossiping about the tea of Jay-Z cheating on Beyonce. But baby, Lemonade, the album and the film, was about so much more than that. It was about healing. It was about doing shadow work. It was about breaking generational curses, embracing generational blessings, forgiveness, and redemption. Let's get into it. Lemonade, the film, is broken up into 11 chapters, starting with intuition and ending with redemption. Now, in the intuition chapter, she opens up with herself on stage, dressed in her all-black infamous work hoodie. And that is a symbolism that, listen, I'm on stage. I'm about to bear my life, my journey, and tell tell y'all the work I have been putting in, not just in this album, but the work I've been putting into my life. And we know and understand that symbolism because she's also walking through a field, like she's searching for something. And what she's searching for is the truth. In this chapter, she has the song Pray You Catch Me playing, where she's saying that her intuition is speaking to her. She said, I can taste the dishonesty. It's all over your breath. So her intuition is telling her that something is going on, that man is creeping. But she's in denial. She doesn't want to accept that this is the truth. So instead of accepting that the truth is that man is out there doing some things he ain't got no business doing, she goes on a journey of rejecting her intuition, of denying what she genuinely knows. She goes on a journey of trying to bend and fold and flex and fix herself. And this is symbolized with her falling from a building, but instead of hitting the ground, she falls into a body of water. And in that water, she sees herself, a shell of herself. And this is paired with her saying the poem where she's talking about how she attempted to do all of these things to become a different woman. She said she swallowed a sword, which means essentially that she swallowed her own intuition. She swallowed herself, right? She talks about plugging her menses with pages from the Bible, and that's the part that had the people in the uproar. The Christians was in an uproar. But really, she's talking about the physical, mental, and spiritual work that she did to detach from her intuition and become a woman that she didn't know she was. She was looking at herself and didn't even recognize who she was. Essentially, she had unalived her authentic self to fit and mold into this relationship. That's what happens when you reject your intuition. Now, between the denial chapter and the next chapter, which is anger, there is an acceptance of the truth. When Beyonce says in poetry form, you remind me of my father, generations of men who used to lie to me. Baby, she is insinuating that she's accepting the truth that her husband is like her father. And this is when we first get introduced to the generational curse. And if you read Mama Tina's book, Matriarch, you know why that acceptance of that truth led to Beyonce's anger. And this is when we get the infamous hold up, they don't love you like I love you, Oshun moment, where her flood waters, those river waters, those lake waters come flooding the steps, and she comes down with that bat, and baby, she's letting out all her anger. And a lot of people are familiar with the Orisha Oshun as being all about love and sensuality and fertility, but Oshun is a warrior Orisha for a reason. She does not play. So in this chapter of anger, you get to see a juxtaposition between Beyonce present day releasing her anger via the bat, and then it goes black and white, which is a sign that she's releasing the generational anger of women in her family who have been lied to by men like her husband and her father. And that's when we see her get in that truck and running over those old school cars with that big old monster truck. That's that real Oshun warrior energy. And baby, she really elevates the spiritual symbolism when we get to the chapter of apathy, which is detachment. She starts to detach from that man because she realizes that he doesn't value her and see her the way she deserves to be seen. This is when we have, who do you think I is? You ain't married to no average, like clearly you don't know who you married to. You ain't honoring me the way I deserve to be honored. And she unalives the old version of herself that used to allow disrespect. And that is symbolized by a person head bowed, dressed in all black. And then she has the young girls who are wearing sigils all over their face and body, honoring that woman, that old version of herself, and she's sitting there finding her joy and honoring herself again. In the chapter of apathy is when we get to see images like Beyonce in a spiritual bath, again, cleansing herself and recognizing her power as she's on this journey. We get to see her with her sigils, her protection over her third eye, signifying that she is reconnected to her intuition and she knows who she is. We get to see her depicted as Queen Nefertiti with her arms behind her back, serpent style, signifying that I am a queen and I'm not reaching to attach to your love no more. Baby, the symbolism is clear in apathy, honey. And like she said, don't hurt yourself. Now, one of my favorite spiritual symbols that she had playing during the chapter of apathy is this symbolism of all of these women unwillingly attached to each other. They are trying to break away and break out of these bonds. And this is symbolic to the spiritual connection and tie that happens when a person is cheating on you. You are spiritually and energetically bound to all of these people that they brought into the relationship without consent. She's like, you don't realize who I am? I'm a queen. You ain't married to no average. You better go back to Becky with the good hair, because these are the women you have me spiritually attached to and bound to without my consent. How could you do that? Don't hurt yourself. I'm reclaiming my power back. I'm not allowing that disrespect. Baby, you gonna be sorry, okay? And that's when she has Sorry playing. And I find it interesting that in the video of Sorry, she has a bunch of black women who have experienced disrespect in the public, like Serena Williams and many, many, many others. The symbolism is clear, baby. Now, after the chapter of apathy or detachment, we have the chapter of emptiness, right? And a lot of people kind of felt like this is when the film took a bit of a dark turn, but really it took a dark feminine turn. It took a divine feminine turn, because this is the chapter where she's talking about embracing her divine feminine power of sensuality, right? And understanding the power of magic, right? So she's talking about how her and her partner are still engaging, okay, but he can't even look her in her eyes when they climax, because he knows that she can see the depths of his soul, and she knows that he is empty. She knows that he is not the person that he's been claiming to be. As she has some work to do, so does he. So they are still engaging, and she's embracing her divine feminine power, but she's also challenging him to be better. And during this chapter, she's acknowledging the power of the woman and how the woman has always been blamed for the woes of the world. For example, Eve being blamed for sin, right? She's comparing the woman, the womb, to the moon. And she's saying, we blame you for the flush of blood. We blame you for nightmares. We blame you for nighttime, right? Saying that we blame you for all of this darkness, but really, you are the light. And again, she's comparing the moon to the womb, to women. At the end of empathy, she decides to burn it all down. Still engaging with him is not even worth it. We gotta burn this whole foundation down because it's built on lies, and she knows that she's in the midst of her dark night of the soul. She burns down that foundation and she steps out in all white lace, saying that I'm going on a journey. And after that is accountability. And baby, that's when we get to the work. After the chapter of emptiness, where she realizes that the foundation of this relationship is just not well, and she chooses to burn it all down and begin again, she decides to go on a journey where she takes accountability. And this is the phase of healing that a lot of people have a hard time with, because this is when you have to ask yourself, how did I manifest this situation in my life? If you believe in the law of attraction, if you believe in manifestation, you can't just take accountability when things go good. You have to also take accountability when things just ain't right. So she said, you know what? I'm going to take accountability for the manifestation of this situation in my life, and I'm going to go back and ask myself, how did I get here? This is when she returns to Louisiana, which is the land of her mother. In this phase, she's asking her mother, how did you get into this relationship? How did you get into this situation? Beyonce is having a reflective moment where she's showing a montage of relationships. And in that montage, there is a couple arguing and a little girl covering her ears, signaling that that may be the experience that Beyonce had as a child. And she's speaking to her mother, and she's asking her in poetry form, of course, why did you fall in love with this man? Did he root you? What has he done to you? And then she says, did you grow accustomed to the back of his head? Signifying that, listen, your husband ain't no good. Why did you get into this relationship? How did you end up here? But then there's like an aha moment where Beyonce says, wait a minute, am I talking about your husband or your father? And this is the huge climax or turning point in the story when Beyonce realizes that, listen, my mother may have manifested a husband like her father. She manifested a man like her father, and Beyonce has manifested a man like her father. And the issue with this is their fathers were good fathers, but their fathers were not good husbands. And that's when daddy lessons start playing, and we get to see the relationship between Beyonce and her father. And she's talking about all the things she's been taught by her dad and how good of a father he is. We also get to see a juxtaposition juxtaposition of the footage of Matthew Knowles being a good father to Beyonce and then also being a good father to her daughter Blue, right? So we get to see how he is a great father, but unfortunately, Matthew is not a good husband, right? And I think that Beyonce is really denoting here that there's a generational curse in her family where the women have a habit of manifesting men who are like their fathers. But again, their fathers are not good husbands. On Beyonce's first album, Dangerously in Love, she has a song called Daddy, where she literally says, I want my husband to be like my daddy. I want my son to be like my daddy. She's manifesting her husband like her father without realizing that her father is not a good husband. And this is the accountability portion of the story, because it's not to say she's to blame for this happening, but it is to say that there's a generational curse here that needs to be broken, and she's willing to do the work to break that generational curse so that her daughters are not manifesting a man like their father because their father's a good father, but their father may not be a good husband. And this is when we have to acknowledge the spiritual symbolism of the second line at the funeral. For those of you who don't know, the second line is a form of celebration that is native to New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, they often have the second line at the funeral to celebrate the life that was. It's beautiful that she incorporated the second line at the funeral in this scene where she's reflecting and celebrating how good her father was to her, while also acknowledging that there has to be a release of the life of him manifesting as a husband in her life, right? So it's a funeral for his manifestation as a husband in her life through her husband, while also celebrating the life and giving life to who he was as a father. Beautiful spiritual symbolism right there, Beyonce. I see what you did, girl. And for those of you who are like, well, if she did all this healing, why did she go back to him? Listen, you gotta go to Reformation. The chapter of Reformation is the chapter of rebuilding. Keep in mind, she's acknowledged that, listen, we had to burn down this whole foundation that was built on a bed of lies, this magical dream mansion of a relationship that appeared good, but was really built on a foundation of lies. We got to burn this down, and we need to start over and rebuild. And she's acknowledging in the phase or the chapter of Reformation that we are going to rebuild this love, because this love is valuable and this love can heal. And that's where she's playing love drought. Now, one of my favorite spiritual symbolisms in this scene or in this chapter is the soul tie. The way she symbolized the soul tie as a rope tied around waist, resting between the solar plexus and the sacral, which are divine feminine chakras of emotions and divine feminine energy. She has the rope resting between there, connected to something or someone at the other end. And we know that someone is her love. And we have to acknowledge at this point, she is not the only one who's doing the healing work to break these generational curses. If you listen to Jay-Z's album 444, his whole album is him telling his side of the story and acknowledging his work that he has done. If you watch the footnotes that Jay-Z had attached to each song on the album 444, it's like a little mini documentary that he did for each song, where he's interviewing a bunch of Black men about their experiences with love and therapy. And in that footnotes docuseries, he's talking about the healing work that he had to do to be more vulnerable, to embrace love, to be honest and whole, right? So she didn't go back to a man who was the same old man. She chose to move forward with the man who was doing the work too. And that's where we get to the chapter of forgiveness, where she has the lineage of women that she's leading going to the water, right? Signifying that we are cleansing this energy of this generational curse. And keep in mind, her man has been doing his work too, right? And she's playing the song Sandcastles, where she's acknowledging, listen, we built sandcastles that washed away, right? So she's acknowledging that we have released that old thing and we are doing the work to rebuild and reform a new version of love, a better version of love. And then she has the song Forward playing, which again, she's acknowledging that we're not going back. We are moving forward. These are not two people who are the same people. These are two people who have released what is no longer for their wellness, and they are rebuilding a new version of their love, a better version of their love that is centered in healing and wellness. Now, I done told y'all 50 times that Beyonce's brand is Ancestor Ancestor Veneration, and the chapter of resurrection is all about honoring the ancestors. During this chapter, she has the mother of Mike Brown, the mother of Eric Gardner, the mother of Trayvon Martin, and many, many others holding up photos of their loved ones who have transitioned, also known as the ancestors. She also has a New Orleans Zulu woman walking around a feast table, shaking a tambourine, releasing vibration, which welcomes in the ancestors to feast. And this is how we practice ancestor veneration. This is how we practice uplifting the energy of our ancestors. The chapter of resurrection is all about welcoming the ancestors into your life in wellness, with wellness and love, and honoring them and feeding their energy to elevate their energy so they may guide you with love and wellness. They clear your path and make it easy. They open your roads. They lead you to the waters so that you may drink. Now, Sister Queen Beyonce ain't slick, okay? Because along with talking about ancestor veneration, she also opens up about her spiritual gifts. And she acknowledged being at the nail salon and having her hand turned over and her palm read. And the person told her, I can see your children. I can see your daughters. And then she says that night she dreamed about birthing a daughter, one from her belly and then one birth from her throat. And I honestly feel like her talking about this dream of birthing one daughter out of a scar on her belly, a scar that healed into a smile, which we know, as Beyonce has shared, that she ended up having C-sections, right? So she kind of foresaw the birth of her future daughters, her future children via C-section, but then she birthed one out of her throat, which is my sign that she birthed her own inner child, honey. So in this section, she acknowledged the spiritual gift of being a reader, a palm reader, but also the spiritual gift of being a dreamer that came along with the ancestor veneration. And now that she has released this old version of herself that wasn't aligned in wellness and authenticity, now that she has done the shadow work, now that her partner has done his work to heal himself and be a better version than who he has ever been before, now that they have rebuilt their love on truth and authenticity, now that she has welcomed the ancestors in with love and wellness to guide her, we move to the chapter of hope, which opens up to young people preparing a feast. And in this chapter, we have a lot of signs and symbolisms of the ancestors watching over, covering her, guiding her, being that guiding light of protection and clarity, right? We have Beyonce singing Freedom a cappella to the mothers of Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, Eric Gardner, and many, many other people who are also honoring ancestors. We have a young sister dancing point, right? Ballet, acknowledging the transition of life into wellness, right? We have a whole bunch of symbolism in this scene to acknowledge that we are moving to a next chapter of our life that is centered in hope and love and wellness. This whole scene of hope is just beautiful to me. Now the film has closed out with the chapter of redemption, where Beyonce is sharing her recipe for some good lemonade, right? And she has Mama Hattie speaking and sharing and acknowledging that, listen, when life gives you lemon, we make lemonade. And this is when we have All Night playing, where she's talking about how, listen, this sweet love is beautiful, right? And we have the right to honor this love. And love may not always be pretty, but at the end of the day, it's worthy and it's healthy and it's healing and it's needed. And love is not just between a husband and a wife, right? She does acknowledge the love between the husband and the wife, where she has like a montage of couples who are deeply in love, including herself and Jay-Z, and she's showing their family. She's also talking about the love between mother and daughter, right? So she's showing herself having her hair done by her baby, and then she's showing herself doing her grandmother's hair, her elder's hair, which is that generational love between mother and daughter, because again, she's done the work to break the generational curse. And this is when we have to talk about how We can't just acknowledge generational curses. It's important to do that, right? But we also have to acknowledge those generational blessings. And a part of rebuilding this house of love and divine light on authenticity is embracing those generational blessings and uplifting those generational blessings. So this chapter of redemption is really all about passing down the generational blessing of true, authentic love, health, self-love, wholeness, and knowing who you are, knowledge of self. Overall, the film Lemonade is really a journey of doing the work to release attachment to things that are no longer serving you. Whether you got to do that through a spiritual bath or you got to go to the water with your sisters and do a cleanse, you have to be able to release what is no longer serving you. Acknowledge the queen in yourself. And sometimes doing that work takes tapping into your warrior energy. And it's going to look like a whole lot of shadow work, which ain't always going to feel good, but it's necessary. And it's important to keep in mind that when you go to those waters and you cleanse yourself, you're not just doing this work for yourself, you're doing this work for a whole line of women who came before you and who will come after you. And it's important to remember that you don't have to do this work alone. It's good to have a good tribe with you to support you and uplift you when you don't have the strength to support and uplift yourself, because this work can get thick sometimes. And just know that as you are doing that shadow work and healing yourself and breaking those generational curses, your ancestors are watching over you and they are guiding you and protecting you. Never forget that. Always venerate them and honor them. And the beautiful part about all of the healing work and the ancestor veneration and the shadow work and the wellness work is a true, authentic love. Not just a love with a partner, not just a love with children, but really the true, authentic love of self. As we know, the internal manifests as the external. You attract what you are. And when you genuinely love and honor yourself, you will attract a true, authentic, genuine love. I hope that y'all enjoyed this spiritual review of Lemonade, the film. I promise you, it is so worthy of a watch on your own. There's so many things that I didn't even have time to talk about. So much spiritual symbolism, sigils, and some more stuff that I didn't have time to talk about in this review. But go watch it for yourself and see if you catch these gems. And watch the footnotes to 444 as well, so you can see the work that Jay-Z was doing and that all of these Black men in that docuseries are doing to heal themselves, be more authentic, embrace true, authentic love. And more than anything, I hope you all remember that Lemonade is not a film about healing a relationship with a man. Lemonade is a film about healing thyself, gaining knowledge of self, and being able to manifest true, authentic love from within. Much love, y'all.